My parents sold their house to send my older brother abroad. They called it an investment in his future. He called it freedom, clubs, designer clothes, party trips, tuition unpaid, classes skipped. And when the money ran out, the bank didn't call him. They called my parents. Foreclosure. 25 years of memories gone. And then they showed up at my door. Not to apologize. Not to ask for advice. To ask for my house. Sell it. Or let them move in. Because family helps family. They bet everything on the golden child. And when that bet failed, they expected the quiet son to cover the loss. I said no. And that's when they realized I wasn't the backup plan anymore. Let me tell you how the investment collapsed. In my family, my older brother wasn't just a son. He was an investment. From the time we were kids, everything revolved around him. His grades, his competitions, his potential. My parents didn't just believe in him. They built their future around him. He was 2 years older than me. Charismatic, loud, confident. The kind of kid teachers described as full of promise. I was the quieter one. Practical, observant, independent. When I got good grades, my parents would say, "That's nice." When he got good grades, they'd say, "This is just the beginning." There's a difference between approval and expectation. He had expectation. I had independence. By high school, the gap was obvious. My brother wanted to study abroad. Big university, international degree, prestige. My parents talked about it like it was destiny. We have to give him every opportunity. We can't limit his future. Every conversation about money somehow led back to him. Private tutoring, extra classes, entrance prep courses that cost more than our annual family vacation. When I needed a new laptop for school, my dad said, "Use the old one for now." When my brother wanted a newer one for performance, they bought it immediately, not because they loved him more, because they believed in his return value. I learned something early. If I wanted something, I had to earn it myself. So I did. Part-time jobs, scholarships, used textbooks. I stopped asking for help around 17. Not because I didn't need it, because I knew the answer before I asked. We're stretched right now. Your brother's applications are expensive. Everything was temporary. Everything was for his future. The day my brother got accepted into a foreign university, my mother cried like he had won the lottery. My father walked around the house, smiling for hours. They called relatives. They made announcements. They said things like, "Our sacrifice is worth it." That word stuck with me. Sacrifice. Because I knew what it meant. It meant money. Big money. And we didn't have big money. A few weeks later, I overheard my parents arguing late at night. Whispers. Numbers. Stress. The next morning, my father told us they were restructuring finances. That's how he phrased it. Restructuring. What he meant was this. They either sold the house outright or mortgaged it so heavily it might as well have been sold, all to fund my brother's tuition, housing, and living expenses. They said it proudly. "We're investing in our son." I stood there in the living room and nodded. Because what else do you do when your parents gamble the roof over your head? Before he left, there was a farewell dinner. Relatives came. They praised him. They praised my parents. They said things like, "This is how success is built." No one asked what happened to the house equity. No one asked about risk. Because risk feels noble when it's dressed up as love. I remember pulling my dad aside quietly after dinner. "Are you sure this is safe?" I asked. He looked at me like I had insulted him. "Do you not trust your brother?" That wasn't what I asked. But in that house, questioning him meant doubting him. And doubting him meant betrayal. So I stopped questioning. Out loud. Meanwhile, I was building something much smaller, but solid. I finished my degree locally. Got a stable job. Saved aggressively. No flashy lifestyle. No foreign photos. No dramatic announcements. Just quiet progress. By 28, I bought my own house. Nothing huge, but fully mine. No parental help. No family loans. When I told my parents, my mom said, "That's good. Stability matters." Stability. That word again. Not excitement. Not pride. Just practical approval. My brother, meanwhile, was posting pictures from abroad. Clubs. Parties. designer clothes, expensive dinners, new phone every year. Comments under his post said, "Living the dream." My parents defended everything. "He's networking. Experience matters. Exposure is important." Every red flag became growth. Every expense became necessary. And every time I visited home, I noticed something else. The house felt different. Quieter. Tenser. Bills stacked on the counter. Phone calls taken in private. My dad's hair turning grayer faster than it should. But when I asked if everything was okay, the answer was always the same. "We're fine. Don't worry." I wasn't the investment. I was the backup plan. I just didn't know it yet. Because when you bet everything on one child, you assume the other will stay responsible, available, stable. You assume he'll understand. And I did. For years. Until the day the bank knocked on their door. And suddenly, I wasn't the quiet son anymore. I was the solution. At first, the photos were harmless. New campus. New city. Group selfies with international friends. Smiling captions about new beginnings. My parents printed some of them. Framed one. Placed it in the living room. Like proof their gamble was working. Then the posts started changing. Nightclubs. Luxury restaurants. Designer jackets I knew weren't cheap. Weekend trips to other countries. Every picture screamed lifestyle, not student. When I casually asked my mom how he could afford all that, she said, "Some things are just part of the experience." Experience. That word became their shield. One evening, my dad called him on speaker while I was visiting. I heard enough of the conversation to understand something wasn't right. "Did you pay the tuition installment?" my dad asked. A pause. Yeah, I handled it," my brother replied quickly. Too quickly. After the call ended, I said quietly, "He sounded unsure." My mom immediately snapped. "Why do you always assume the worst?" I wasn't assuming. I was calculating, and the math didn't make sense. A few months later, my father's tone changed. He started working longer hours, picking up consulting jobs he'd previously turned down. My mom cut back on groceries. Small things, quiet signs, the kind families pretend not to notice. But I noticed, because when you're not the favorite, you learn to read the room. Then came the first temporary adjustment. My dad asked if I could float them some money. "Just until next quarter," he said. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was the first time the investment started draining outside the original plan. I sent it, not because I agreed, because I didn't want them spiraling. Meanwhile, my brother upgraded his apartment, posted about it proudly. Needed more space. More space for what? He was supposed to be studying. The breaking crack came in the form of an email. Not to me, to my father, but I was there when he opened it. His hand shook slightly. Outstanding balance. That phrase hung in the air. He closed the laptop quickly. Said it was nothing, but I had seen the amount. It wasn't nothing. It was months of unpaid tuition. That night, I confronted him gently. Is he actually paying his fees? My father's face hardened. He's under pressure. That's not what I asked. He's young. That wasn't an answer either. When my mom found out I had questioned it, she accused me of jealousy. Jealous. That word almost made me laugh. I didn't want his lifestyle. I wanted sustainability. But in that house, caution looked like resentment, and optimism looked like love. Then the truth started leaking. My brother wasn't failing classes. He wasn't even attending some of them. He had deferred 2 semesters, spent most of his time building connections, which, translated, meant partying. When I asked my dad what the plan was, he said, "He just needs time." Time. Time was something the bank doesn't give generously. Interest rates climbed. Mortgage pressure increased. Collection calls became more frequent. I could see it in my father's posture, in the way my mother avoided certain conversations. But still, if I suggested pulling him back home, they reacted defensively. We didn't raise a quitter. No, they raised a gambler, and they had pushed all their chips behind him. The final straw came when my brother called, not ashamed, not worried, but irritated. "They're threatening to suspend me if the payment doesn't go through." He sounded annoyed, like the university was inconveniencing him. My father transferred another large amount that night. I watched him do it. And I knew there wasn't much left. Not in savings, not in equity, not a margin. A few months later, the photos stopped. Not because he matured, because he stopped posting publicly. And that silence was louder than anything before. Because when the dream goes quiet, reality usually follows. And reality doesn't care about favoritism. The bank's letter arrived on a Wednesday. Certified mail. I was there when it came. And when my father opened it, I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. Not irritation. Not pride. Fear. Because the mortgage wasn't just heavy anymore. It was collapsing. And for the first time in years, the investment was underwater. And that's when my parents finally called my brother home. Not because he graduated, not because he succeeded, but because they ran out of money. And when he came back, he didn't bring a degree. He brought debt and disappointment. And suddenly, they started looking at me differently. Not as the stable son, but as the only remaining asset. My brother came back on a Sunday. No celebration. No airport photos. No welcome dinner. Just 2 suitcases and a look I had never seen on his face before. Not guilt. Not shame. Just irritation. Like the world had inconvenienced him. He didn't finish his degree. Didn't complete the program. Didn't secure a job. What he did have was credit card debt, unpaid tuition balances, and a vague explanation about toxic university politics. My parents didn't yell. They didn't scream. They didn't blame him. They absorbed it, like they always had. We'll figure it out, my mother kept saying. That sentence used to sound reassuring. Now it sounded desperate. The bank didn't care about optimism. 3 weeks after he returned, the second letter came. Final notice. Delinquency. Foreclosure proceedings initiated. My father read it twice, then sat down slowly. The silence in that house felt heavier than anything I'd experienced there before. This wasn't theoretical anymore. They weren't restructuring. They were losing it. The house, the one they had lived in for 25 years, the one they sold or mortgaged for his future, was slipping away. I asked the question carefully. How much is left? My father gave me a number. It made my chest tighten. It wasn't something you fix with overtime. It wasn't something you patch. It was catastrophic. They tried to negotiate, tried to refinance, tried to delay. But when your income doesn't support the debt, banks don't extend mercy. They extend deadlines, short ones. And here's the part that hurt the most. Even then, even after everything collapsed, they didn't confront my brother. They didn't say, "This is your responsibility." Instead, they started talking differently around me. Quieter, measuring my reactions, testing the temperature, like they were circling something. One evening, my mother came to my house unannounced. She sat at my kitchen table, looked around slowly. "You've done well for yourself," she said. I nodded. "You worked hard." Another nod. Then she said it. "You have space here." Not a question, a statement. I felt it coming, but hearing it still made my stomach tighten. "We might need to stay somewhere temporarily." Temporarily. That word is elastic. It stretches, sometimes forever. I asked carefully, "What about renting?" My father answered this time. Renting would waste money. Waste money. The irony almost made me laugh. They had burned equity for a dream. But renting was wasteful. Then the real suggestion surfaced. Not just them staying with me, but something bigger. "If you sold this house," my mother began gently. My chest went cold. "We could clear the balance." Clear the balance. Meaning, I liquidate my stability. To fix their gamble. My brother sat there the whole time. Silent. Not apologizing. Not offering solutions. Just waiting. Like he had waited his entire life for someone else to solve things. "You're the stable one," my father said finally. "You understand responsibility." That sentence was supposed to flatter me, but it felt like a trap. Because responsibility in our family meant sacrifice. And sacrifice meant me. I looked around my living room. The couch I paid for. The floors I renovated. The walls I painted myself. Every inch earned. Not funded. Not gifted. Earned. "Are you asking me to sell my house?" I asked clearly. Silence. Then my mother said softly, We're asking you to help your family. Help, not share the burden, not support proportionally. Absorb it entirely. My brother finally spoke. It's not forever. He had said that about university too. And that's when I realized something. They didn't see this as a consequence of his choices. They saw it as a redistribution of resources, from the stable child to the failing one. Again, I stood up, not angry, not loud, just steady. I won't sell my house. The air changed instantly. My father's expression hardened. My mother's eyes filled with something between disbelief and betrayal. My brother scoffed quietly. You would let us lose everything? My mom asked. No, they had already lost it. Before they walked into my house. Before they made this request. Before they framed it as love. I didn't gamble this house, I said calmly. You did. And that sentence was the first time I had ever said the truth without cushioning it. They left angry, not devastated. Angry, because in their mind, I had failed the family. But I wasn't the one who put the roof on the table. I was just the one who refused to trade mine. 2 weeks later, the foreclosure finalized. They moved into a small rented apartment. Not because I forced them, because reality did. And for the first time in our lives, my brother had to look at the consequences of being the investment that didn't pay off. But the story wasn't over. Because when you refuse to sacrifice, the backlash doesn't stop at disappointment. It escalates. And they weren't done trying to make me feel guilty. I thought the worst part was saying no. It wasn't. The worst part was what came after. Because when direct pressure doesn't work, people recruit witnesses. The first call came from my aunt. I heard what happened. That tone. Soft. Disappointed. Like I had committed something shameful. They sacrificed so much for you boys. For us. Not him. Us. I didn't correct her. I just listened. You're young. You'll recover from selling one house. But they're older. There it was. The moral math. My stability weighed against their age. Then came my cousin. Then an uncle. Then a family group chat message about family unity in hard times. Not once did anyone mention my brother's name. Not once did anyone ask what he contributed. The narrative had shifted quickly. It wasn't. They lost the house because of bad financial decisions. It became, they lost the house because their younger son refused to help. Rewriting is powerful when enough people repeat it. My brother finally texted me directly. You're really going to let mom cry every night? That line was surgical, designed to pierce. I replied calmly. Is she crying about losing the house or about me not fixing it? He didn't respond because we both knew the difference. A week later, my parents invited me over to the rented apartment. I almost didn't go, but I did, because avoiding it would have made me look guilty. The place was small. 2 bedrooms. Thin walls. No yard. No pride left in the air. My mother looked smaller somehow. My father looked older. And for a second, for one dangerous second, I felt it. Guilt. Real guilt. Because consequences don't just punish decisions. They punish everyone involved. Then my father said something that snapped me back. We wouldn't be here if you'd stepped up. Stepped up. Like I had failed an obligation. Like my house was communal property. That's when I understood something clearly. This wasn't about survival. It was about hierarchy. In their minds, I was still the backup son. The responsible one. The safety net. And safety nets aren't allowed to say no. I worked for my house, I said evenly. And you worked for yours, my father replied sharply. Yes, I said, until you put at risk. Silence. My brother rolled his eyes. This is pointless, he muttered. Exactly. Because he still wasn't apologizing. Still wasn't offering solutions. Still wasn't saying, I'll fix this. He was waiting for me to. That night, the group chat exploded. Passive-aggressive messages. Bible verses about honoring parents. Quotes about sacrifice. Even a subtle dig from my cousin. Some people forget where they came from. I almost replied. Almost. But I didn't. Because I realized something powerful. The only leverage they had was my reaction. And if I stopped reacting, the campaign would lose oxygen. So I went quiet. No defending. No arguing. No long explanations. Just calm boundaries. When someone said I was selfish, I replied, I disagree. When someone said I should sell, I replied, no, nothing more. You'd be surprised how uncomfortable people get when you don't justify yourself. Then came a last attempt. My mother called late one night, crying. Real tears this time. Your brother is struggling, she said. He feels like a failure. I paused, because that sentence mattered. Not the house, not the mortgage. Him. He needs support, she continued. And there it was. The truth underneath everything. This wasn't about debt. It was about protecting him from discomfort, from consequences, from adulthood. Support doesn't mean replacing what he wasted, I said softly. It means letting him rebuild. She went quiet. Then she whispered something I didn't expect. You've changed. That word again. Changed. People always say that when you stop playing your assigned role. After that call, something shifted permanently. The pressure slowed. Not because they agreed, but because they realized I wouldn't bend. And when pressure meets a wall, eventually, it redirects. My brother got a job. Not glamorous, not prestigious, but real. My parents adjusted to the apartment. Complained at first, then adapted, because that's what humans do. When the bailout doesn't arrive, we survive anyway. And that's when I realized something uncomfortable. They didn't need my house. They wanted the comfort of not facing consequences. There's a difference. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. But the real shift hadn't happened yet. Because consequences don't stop at loss. They reshape relationships. And soon, the golden child stopped shining. My brother lasted 3 weeks at his first job. Customer service at a logistics company. Entry level. Routine. Predictable. He quit because, in his words, it wasn't aligned with his skill set. He didn't have a skill set. Not one that paid bills. The second job lasted longer. Construction site assistant. Physical work. Long hours. He came home exhausted. Complained constantly. Blamed management. Blamed the economy. Blamed bad timing. Never blamed himself. My parents started aging faster. Stress does that. It compresses years into months. My father's pride had already taken a hit when they lost the house. But watching the son, he gambled everything on drift. That hit differently. Because hope is easier to carry than disappointment. One evening, my father called me. Not angry. Not defensive. Just tired. He's trying, he said. That sentence felt smaller than it used to. He has to. I replied gently. Silence. Then my father asked something unexpected. Were we wrong? Not about the house. About him. That question hung in the air for several seconds. I could have said yes. I could have unloaded years of quiet frustration. But I didn't. I said, you believed in him. Belief isn't the same as strategy. But I didn't need to say that. He already knew. Meanwhile, my brother stopped coming to family dinners. Stopped answering relatives. Stopped posting online. When the spotlight fades, reality gets louder. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't protected from it. The real collapse happened during a small family gathering. Nothing dramatic. Just dinner. My aunt made a casual comment. At least you have your degree. It wasn't meant to wound, but it did. My brother snapped. I didn't ask them to sell the house. The room went silent. My mother looked stunned. My father stiffened. Because technically, he was right. He didn't force them. They chose. They projected success onto him. They assumed return on investment. They wrapped sacrifice around ego. And now everyone was drowning in the outcome. My brother left early that night. Didn't say goodbye. My parents sat quietly. And for the first time, they weren't angry at me. They weren't defending him. They were just quiet. That's when the hierarchy truly shifted. Because the golden child isn't golden anymore once the shine fades. A few weeks later, my mother came over alone. No agenda. No manipulation. Just tea. She looked around my house differently this time. Not as a solution. As something stable. You built this yourself, she said softly. Yes. No tension. No edge. Just truth. She nodded slowly. We thought we were helping him. You were, I said. But helping doesn't mean shielding. She didn't argue. That was new. My brother eventually kept a job. Not glamorous. Not international. Just normal. Bills paid slowly. Debt reduced gradually. He stopped talking about big dreams. Started talking about rent prices. That's adulthood. It's not cinematic. It's repetitive. And here's the part no one likes to admit. If I had sold my house, none of this growth would have happened. He wouldn't have adjusted. They wouldn't have reflected. Because rescue delays maturity. It doesn't create it. My father apologized 6 months later. Not dramatically. Not in front of everyone. Just quietly. We shouldn't have asked. That sentence weighed more than the house ever did. Because it meant he understood. Not fully, but enough. My brother hasn't apologized. Not directly. But he doesn't look at me the same way anymore. There's no expectation in his eyes now. Just awareness. And that's enough. Because here's what changed. I'm no longer the backup plan. I'm not the emergency fund. I'm not the safety net. I'm just the son who said no. And sometimes, that's the most necessary role in a family. But the real closure didn't come from them. It came from me. And that's where this story ends. It's strange how quiet life becomes when the pressure finally lifts. No more group chat debates. No more moral lectures. No more subtle digs about family duty. Just normalcy. My parents adjusted to their apartment. Smaller space. Thinner walls. Fewer memories. But they survived, which proved something important. It didn't need my house. They needed time. My brother kept his job. Not glamorous. Not impressive. But steady. He doesn't talk about studying abroad anymore. Doesn't talk about business ideas. He talks about overtime. Gas prices. Saving for a used car. Ordinary things. And ordinary is healthy. We don't have dramatic family dinners anymore. No big speeches. No emotional confrontations. Just quieter conversations. More careful words. Because once a family goes through something like that, the illusion breaks. And illusions rarely come back. One afternoon, my father and I were sitting on a park bench. No agenda. Just fresh air. He looked older than I remembered. Not weak. Just humbled. "You always were the steady one," he said. I smiled slightly. That wasn't praise. That was recognition. And recognition, even late, still matters. For years, I thought I wasn't the chosen son. The exciting one. The promising one. The future. But I realized something. I was the foundation. And foundations don't get applause. They just hold everything up. Until someone tries to remove them. There was a moment, and I'm honest about this, when I wondered, should I have helped more? Should I have softened the fall? But every time that thought came, I remembered something simple. They made a decision. A risky one. Out of love. Out of pride. Out of belief. But it was their decision. And adulthood means owning outcomes. Even painful ones. My brother and I had a conversation recently. Nothing dramatic. He said quietly, "I didn't realize how much they risked." I nodded. He looked down and added, "I thought it would just work out." That sentence summed up everything. He thought it would work out, because someone always made it work out. I didn't rescue him. And because I didn't, he had to build. And because he had to build, he changed. Not overnight. Not magically. But steadily. And steady wins long term. The family doesn't see me as the cold one anymore. They see me as firm. Which is different. Cold rejects. Firm protects. I didn't reject them. I protected myself. And sometimes that feels the same to people who benefited from your sacrifice. The house I live in now, it feels different too. Not because it's bigger. Not because it's valuable. But because I know it stands on my decisions. Not guilt. Not pressure. Not obligation. Just choice. If there's one thing this whole experience taught me, it's this. You can love your family without funding their mistakes. You can care deeply without collapsing your boundaries. And saying no doesn't make you selfish. Sometimes it's the only way everyone grows. They lost a house. Yes, but they gained perspective. My brother lost a fantasy, but he gained adulthood. And I lost the role of emergency solution. But I gained peace. And peace is worth more than property.